morning, Bucknutters. Welcome into the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Friday, January 29th, 2016. I am Dave Biddle, and I am happy to be joined by Bucknuts columnist Brandon Castel. Brandon, very good morning and good to talk to you.
Absolutely, Dave. Thanks for having me on. Always good to jump on, talk with you and the folks here at Bucknuts.
So we're 5 days away from National Signing Day. B-Cast, I want to get your perspective on how Ohio State beat writers view recruiting and signing day in particular. You know, frankly, I hear a lot of Buckeye beat writers kind of make fun of recruiting at times, downplay the importance of it, and I get that. But, you know, I think recruiting is the lifeblood of a college football program, and furthermore, these are players that me and my fellow beat writers, you and your fellow beat writers will be covering for the next 3 to 5 years. Brandon, how do you think the typical Ohio State beat writer views recruiting?
That's a great question, and it's a topic that I think has changed over the last 10 years, really. I think when I first got on the beat, and started talking recruiting and some of that stuff, that I think a lot of the guys who had been on the beat for a while and even some of the guys who were new to the beat at that time, they really looked at it as kind of a lesser part of the job, really something that was beneath them to talk about recruiting, or these high school kids, kind of looked at the recruiting services a little bit like they were, a little bit of weirdos, because they were calling these high school kids and tracking the movements and the comments and, all this stuff of these high school kids. But it's funny how that has kind of shifted over the last, 5 to 10 years as these, the recruiting services like 24/7 Sports have really kind of taken off. And really driven a lot of the conversation. They've kind of melded with the college sports coverage, and now you have a lot of Yahoo Sports and CBS Sports and ESPN covering recruiting. You have a lot of the big news outlets that are interested in recruiting, and I think it's kind of blended a little bit. You've had some newer guys join the beat that I think understand and get it. I think that there's been a little bit of a shift, and even some of the guys who have been longtime newspaper writers. I remember, early in my career, kind of midway through, having conversations with guys like Tim May at Columbus Dispatch and Doug LeMaurice at the Plain Dealer, and really, I think they didn't understand the obsession with recruiting. But after a few years, I think they really started to get it. Started to get involved with following it. I've had a number of conversations over the years with Doug about recruiting and really the value that it plays, and I know they do a good job of covering it there now. But it took them a while to get to that point of realizing that there is an interest. And it's not weird. It's not about following, it's not, I guess maybe some of it is when you look at Jim Harbaugh sleeping over a kid's house, but mostly it's trying to figure out, who are the next stars going to be, and that's where they're going to come from. We know for a fact. It's not like, all of a sudden they're going to have a bunch of walk-ons come on the team, and those are going to be the guys that lead them to a national championship. Now, not every five-star kid is going to pan out, but there's going to be a lot of them that do. So it's always interesting to kind of figure out who are the kids, and, you can't get too excited about any one kid, but I find it interesting to follow, especially once they're committed, and then you get, to signing day. I think that's when it really starts to become real.
Very well said. I think and we're painting with a very broad brush here, but I think Ohio State beat writers in general, understand the importance of recruiting, and you'll still hear some people, as I said, make fun of it and talk about, people are too obsessed with it and make fun of signing day and all that, but it's been quite the sea change from 10 years ago, as you mentioned. Very well said on your part. And switching gears, a young man that was always Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, the one other thing I've always said is, to me, it's more of an art. It's more of a consistent, can you consistently go out and recruit the best players at each position? I think quarterback being the exception, you really can't go all in and expect one kid to be the kid that's going to change your program. You just never know if a kid's going to make it or not. Noah Spence is a great example. A kid that was a can't miss. Guy's going to be a first or second round pick in the NFL, but he wasn't at Ohio State the last couple of years. So, I don't get too crazy about one in particular recruit. I think what separates Alabama, Ohio State, LSU, some of the other programs is consistent high recruiting and then hitting on quarterbacks. I think that's the one area you can't afford to miss very often on a franchise type quarterback.
One franchise-type quarterback the Buckeyes hit on summer of 2010. We were there covering it, Braxton Miller, and then, against his better judgment, was then thrust into a starting quarterback role as a true freshman in 2011. He's now a wide receiver, as we all know, after an illustrious career at Ohio State, transitioning to a wide receiver as a fifth-year senior this past season. Didn't have a ton of opportunities, but I think, as I've said before, he showed enough on film to entice NFL scouts. And BCast, as you know, because you've posted about this on the board, you started a thread on Bucknuts yesterday, and we've talked about this through the week. Braxton Miller is not only performing well at the Senior Bowl this week, he is like the star of the show. I mean, other than the quarterbacks, he is kind of the star of the show. And my question for you, sir, if you had to bet, how high can Braxton Miller be drafted? How high will he be drafted, Brandon?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's been amazing. You know, every year there's always a few kids that kind of jump off the page at the Senior Bowl. You see some of the guys posting about them and some of the reporters and, maybe some of the coaches or players will mention them. And that's always exciting, but I don't remember. Maybe it's because not a lot of Ohio State guys have been in that position, but I don't remember ever seeing a guy who seemed to be on the tip of the tongue and the first guy mentioned by literally everyone, coaches, scouts, players, media. It just seems like everybody, and if you watch some of the videos and watch any of the practice, you can see why. I mean, Braxton obviously is an incredible athlete. We knew that. He was one of the best athletes in college football. So to me, it's not a surprise. We always knew it was going to take. I remember Urban Meyer, said when he first made the transition, it was going to take a year before you could really expect him to get the nuances down. But his first step, that ability to shake a defensive back on his double move, I mean, it's lethal. His hands are impressive for a guy that didn't play quarterback. You look at his overall body of work, obviously not that many opportunities, but, I think he's got some great body composure, his ability to locate the ball in the air. We saw him make some diving catches this year, saw him make some big plays, and, I think that there's going to be a lot of people intrigued, especially after this week. I know Dane Brugler going into this week had him as one of his top 50 players in the draft, which I was surprised. I didn't think anybody was looking at him that high. So to me, looking at what happened on Senior Day, I think that with the Senior Bowl, I think that what you're going to see is probably, I think there's going to be people talking about him when they get to the second round. He's going to be one of the top guys on the board. I could see him fall into early third round, because the second round there's still a lot of teams that need to fill holes. But I think late third round or late second round, early third round is a great spot to look for Braxton Miller. I think there's just too much potential there for a good team. Maybe the end of the second round, you could see, one of those teams like the Chiefs or, Patriots or somebody that have, a little bit of wiggle room. They've got a good roster. They're really looking for a kind of guy who's going to make a big difference. I could see him coming off the board in that situation.
I'm just so glad he's put himself in this position. Such a good kid. He's been such a great Buckeye. He's kept his nose clean off the field. I'm glad. That's saying it mildly that he's put himself in this position. I feel so good for Braxton Miller. We'll see what happens when the draft rolls around, when the Buckeyes take over this 2016 draft. All right, let's throw some predictions out there. We're going to focus on wide receivers, not H-backs, just the two wide receivers, the true wide receivers for the Buckeyes. Who will be the starting wide receivers for Ohio State in 2016? BCast, you go first. Who are going to be the two wide receivers that start for the Buckeyes this fall?
Well, I mean, that's a very interesting thing because you look back to last year, and outside of Michael Thomas, we didn't really know who the other guy was going to be a year ago. Now, obviously, Michael Thomas and Jalen Marshall are gone. Braxton Miller's gone from that H-back spot. So a lot of positions are open. I think the only guy that's kind of a shoe-in that we all think is going to be one of those guys, if he's healthy and if he's got his weight in the right place, is Noah Brown. I think that's a guy who was slated to start last year. We heard, just about everything about this kid. Think about what people are saying about Braxton at the Senior Bowl. That seemed to be the opinion of Noah Brown coming out of fall camp right before that injury last year. So I think he's a guy that, I don't know. It depends on where they want to use him. They could use him inside a little bit more and kind of use him as a guy who can stretch the field, or they may use him outside if they need to because they really don't have any experience. I think Corey Smith's a guy who, if he gets a 6th year, and it seems like he's going to, if he's healthy again, he's a guy you got to think is going to be in the mix because they just don't have any other guys out there right now. So two guys to me to watch are Paris Campbell and KJ Hill. I think one of those guys will find himself in the starting lineup next year. I don't know which one yet. Obviously, Paris Campbell got a chance this year, didn't catch a single pass, but he's a kid who can block. He was in his first year as an outside guy. So I like one of those two guys to step up and take the other starting spot.
What about Corey Smith? Before I give you my prediction, let's assume Corey Smith is coming back. Where do you put him at?
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's probably in the mix, and if he's back and healthy, we could see Noah Brown and Corey Smith as their two outside guys kind of mixing in. Obviously, I think they're going to mix and match. I just think that this is a great opportunity when you lose those guys, for some of these young guys to really take hold. You're going to have probably Corey Smith and Noah Brown, if they're back healthy, they're probably going to be limited in the spring. I could see one of those other guys really capitalizing on that momentum. I still think Corey Smith is in the mix. He's a guy who's proven he can stretch the field. He's really the only guy on the roster as an outside receiver that has any experience to his name. So certainly going to be in the mix. But and if this were a team that I thought was going to come out and compete for a national championship, then I think they absolutely go with the veteran guy. But I think this is going to be a team that kind of grows throughout the season, could be really dangerous by the end of the year, but obviously a ton of new starters at the beginning of the year. So I think it's a wide open race with some of these young guys maybe capitalizing on that opportunity.
Yeah, I think with such a young group, I really think Corey Smith, I just can't imagine that Urban Meyer would want him back as a sixth-year senior unless Urban Meyer felt that he was starting material. And Corey Smith is also great on special teams, so maybe that plays a role as well. But I think, if Ohio State's fighting for a sixth year, I know they are, and it sounds like he will get that. That's not official yet. We reached out to Jerry Emig this week, Ohio State Sports Information Director. He said nothing is official yet, but, it really sounds like Corey Smith is going to be back. And I have to think if Urban Meyer is fighting for that he really wants Corey Smith in a starting role. But we'll see. There's so many good young wide receivers. My pick is Corey Smith and Noah Brown will be the starting wide receivers, but KJ Hill is going to be in the mix. Torrance Gibson, Austin Mack, Alex Stump, Terry McLaurin, Johnny Dixon, if healthy, James Clark, Paris Campbell. I think Paris Campbell is going to be like a super sub. If he doesn't start, he's going to play a huge role. And you could be right. Paris Campbell could be a starter. I'm huge on that guy. He works hard. He's not even 19 yet. This kid is still 18. He won't be 19 until July. He was 16 when he graduated high school. It's crazy. You have all these people across the country that are redshirting kids like in 8th grade. Paris Campbell was the opposite. He graduated a year early, so not even 19 yet. Paris Campbell is going to play the H. He's going to play wide receiver. He's going to move all around. Maybe he'll play quarterback and some safety. No, I'm kidding on the last two, but he's going to play, sell some hot dogs. He's going to play all around the field. So he's a guy I know they're very high on. Ben Victor, it might be hard for Ben Victor to play as a true freshman because he's coming in late. I think Austin Mack will play as a true freshman. So there's a lot of guys out there, but very green, but I do think Corey Smith's going to see the field. But overall, I think a lot of people are concerned about the wide receiver spot. I know they're young, but so much talent here, B-Cast.
Yeah, I think it's an exciting time. I think that's kind of the overall feeling of the team to me, but you're right. I want to see a couple of these guys come along. I think young talent, sometimes they get in and get their first real playing time, so and then it takes them a little while. So I'm with you. I think if I had to say right now, I'd say, if it's not Corey Smith, then I think Paris Campbell is going to get the job because he got a year to kind of get his feet wet. Yeah, he had some injury problems, throughout the season, but I think he's got a little bit of an advantage on some of these other guys, the KJ Hills and Torrance Gibsons, and even some of the guys like James Clark and Johnny Dixon and Terry McLaurin. Those guys really have not seen the field, so I think Paris Campbell's got a leg up. And the one guy who can crash the party, in my opinion, is Torrance Gibson. If that guy really dials it in and he really becomes a really focused teammate, a really focused student, a really focused wide receiver, obviously his 6'5" or 6'4", whatever he is, and his speed and that combination, I think if he dedicates himself to the position, that's a guy who could really come in and really be a game changer on the outside for this team. But I'm not going to predict it yet because I haven't seen enough from him to think that he's ready to make that kind of jump in his second year. But that's a guy who really could kind of crash the party, and I'm excited to see some of these young guys get an opportunity.
Great stuff from Bucknuts columnist Brandon Castel. Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Dave.
And I want to end the show with some hoops chatter. Ohio State's basketball team held on for a 68-63 win in overtime at Illinois last night. Buckeyes had a big lead late, let that slip away, but were able to win the game in overtime. Any win on the road in Big Ten play is crucial, so this is a big win for the Buckeyes. They're now 14-8 overall, 6-3 in Big Ten play. They've really picked up their performance in Big Ten play started, so good job by the Buckeyes. They were led by Trevor Thompson with 16 points. Kata Bates-Diop, who's from Illinois, had 15 points and 12 rebounds. And Mark Loving had 11 points and 10 rebounds. So, again, good job by the Buckeyes. They will host Maryland on Sunday at 1 p.m. That game will be televised on CBS. Thanks again to Brandon Castel, and thanks to you, the listeners, for tuning into the show. I appreciate it. Hope you have a great day and a great weekend. Take it away, best damn band in the land.